our presenter would like to have the question and answer session throughout his presentation. So if you have any questions during his presentation, don't hesitate to ask the question through the chat column or digitally raise your hand. If there is no other question, oh yeah, once more, I almost forgot. Um, Last week we also have another session, and the recording is already up. So if you have or if you didn't manage to join our webinar last week, it's already on our YouTube channel. So without further ado, I will hand over the session to Atul Kumar. So Atul, please take over
Thanks.
my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Ferry. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to share my screen, and please do let me know if you guys can see the presentation.
Yes, it's good.
Okay. Right. Hi, everyone. This is Atul. And first of all, I would like to thank Ramzi, who is also my ex-colleague and friend, who gave me this opportunity, and we discussed to present in this forum. A little bit about me. I started my technology risk career with KPMG in India. And slowly and steadily, I also advanced towards risk management processes, information security aspects, cyber GRC and strategy, etc. I am a part of a Fortune 500 company, and I lead the European practice for the GRC side of things for the company. It's called Equinix. So, without further ado, and thank you so much for joining. This is a great opportunity, a wonderful forum as well to discuss my views on technology risk quantification. I'm very glad that you guys could make it, and I'm quite happy to see a lot of people turning up for this exciting session. So I would just like to start the forum with a simple question. All of us working towards the information security side of things, we do come across one word which is called risk. Any further inputs which is required. I'm not gonna deal or deep dive into what is a risk and how do we address it, etc. Right now, the topic of concern over here is, how do we manage risk, not by the classical method, but a way by which we can quantify it. So, up on your screen is like a few pointers where I would like to discuss, why technology risk management is important. There are various aspects where business objectives might not be aligned with the IT objectives, and that itself creates certain risks within different organizations. Apart from that, there are newer solutions coming in every time, newer products and services being delivered. We want to serve our customers and clients in a better manner possible. There are upcoming regulations like data sovereignty and protection standards. Any aspects of optimizing our technology stack. Aspects of any software upgrades required. All of them, with any advancement towards technology or business or regulatory aspect, creates plethora of risk within the organization. And severely understated statement is that we most of the times we think that we have the capacity to measure the risk in the right manner, but in general, I've seen various organizations struggling with it. Now, why is it so important? Anybody would like to give it a shot? Why is it more important for us to focus on the risk management piece as a core of IT governance in today's era? Up for any suggestions, any inputs from the audience?
If you don't, you can get out of business on things that happen on which you were not prepared. That's the most
Yeah,
important.
yeah, absolutely. Like, when we talk about newer technologies, we talk about AI, we talk about newer chatbots. We also expose a lot of our assets, a lot of our confidential information, both at personal and corporate level, outside the malicious world. So one of the other aspects is to improve your cyber resilience, to have a better financial grip on, what are we spending on. Most of us, when we interact with our, stakeholders within or outside the organization, we do discuss about whether it's worth the dollar value that we would be paying any technology that has to be implemented. And to do that, we also need certain sort of, mechanism to capture, okay, what are we ingesting inside our technology stack, and what would be the outcome of it, what are the risks that could come out of it. So so to say, on a lighter note, risk management is like a really advanced version of project management in my view. And it has helped several business units, several business entities and corporates, in at least the small span of career that I had with technology consulting. So moving to the next slide, we already discussed that, what does it mean to us within corporate sector, and one of the gentlemen did, answer it very well, that, we need to be kept abreast of what we are getting into and how we want to manage it in upcoming future. Now, a small slide, very simple approach. I'm just trying to set up some context around risk management. So most of us would have seen those red, yellow, green boxed grid or a matrix within our organizations. Could I expect that, or anybody who is not familiar with a classical risk management? I would like to explain that a little bit as well. I I assume it's all right. So when we talk about like a qualitative risk management process versus a quantitative one, a qualitative one is for an example with that red, yellow, green box. We assume some numbers to it. Most of the times when I have deep dived into those numbers and meanings towards it. So let's say if we put a dollar value of, if a particular business service or a technology stack is down for a number of hours, what does it mean to us? Ideally, we try to track it with the business services, but most of the times there is a huge amount of assumptions made to create those metrics. And that's why it is easy to conduct, for sure. It is very simple to implement. We just need like a 4x4 or 9x9 matrix, and we are good to go with that risk management piece. It provides precise insights. Now, the word which I would like you to keep a note of is precise or precision. We'll come back to that in the next slide. But for now, just hold on to that thought of precise insights, and then might not incorporate complex scenarios. So in a qualitative risk management model, we always look forward to the preset matrix, and then calculate it accordingly, which can lead to inaccurate insights. Now, in a quantitative model, where it is a complex methodology, requires high quality data sets, requires reliable inputs. For an example, if we are talking about log management systems, and we're trying to understand the anomaly of people accessing different systems within an organization, we need cleaned data sets. We need data sets which can be relied upon. And then the aspect comes to how to utilize those data sets. We do need expertise from within or external to the organization to make right interpretation. And then comes the aspect of providing accuracy within insights. Now, we can already see that it is a cost benefit model, and it supports financial planning. So probably the cost of implementation of a quantitative model would also pay for it by benefiting the organization in a multifaceted format. Now, when we talk about this slide, the only two words that I would like you guys to have a close focus on is precise and accurate. So I would like to pose a question, or just like a thought, a food for thought statement. Uh, Anybody would like to attempt to explain the difference between precision and accuracy? And it needn't be a bookish information. Whatever you understand from these two words would be highly appreciated. All right. So anybody would like to take at least precision? So
Precision could
what
be, for example, it's 1.2 or 1.354, but
Mhm.
accuracy means is it correct? You can have very precise number, but it doesn't mean it's correct.
Wonderful, wonderful, ma'am. Thank you so much. That's really nice way to put it. So just to put some more context on it, we're talking about precision and accuracy. So if we are talking about a precise number, there could be 10 measurements done for one factual number, and that would be the whole group of precision. So let's say 1.4, 1.41, 1.44, 1.45 is still under the precision radius, but accuracy can be only one specific number, which could be 1.4, which could be the actual fact. So when we talk about a qualitative risk management process, it takes us or the organization or the researcher or risk analyst towards more of accurate data sets rather than the precise data sets. Precision is what we are trying, or we try to achieve, but right now with accurate data sets, we can actually reach out to the nth level of a problem, or nth level of any risk or vulnerability or security exposure, which can be utilized to secure the organization. So that was my take on precision and accuracy. Just wanted to set the context that qualitative risk management is more towards the accurate side of things rather than being on the precision side. Also, to discuss a little bit more about the probability versus possibility. Now, an event could happen. The probability can be calculated. Now, what is the possibility of it is also a superset of probability. So when we talk about 9 out of 10 times I would be fine while I cross the road if I do if I follow the rules and I cross on a zebra crossing. But what is the possibility of somebody getting struck or hit or get into an accident? We need to look at the data sets coming from historical sources. In an IT world, it could be sources from various components like logs or any sort of user manuals or user feedback queries. Now, these are the high quality data sets that we were discussing, where which is one of the requirements of a quantitative risk management module. So now, up until now, what we discussed was, major differences between a qualitative and a quantitative technique. Now, when we come to a quantitative risk management technique, very simple example put up over here. The business case scenario is, a business unit would like to ingest a new system, and for that they need some sort of a hardware and some sort of a software as well. Now, to understand what could be the risk of it, of utilizing this particular unit, including the hardware and the software, we need to actually understand a few factors, and those factors are mostly towards what is the value of the asset that we are looking forward to, because a risk can only pose or can only be imposed on a valuable asset. We would probably try and look at it from an IT perspective. Sure, enterprise risk management folks would also say that there could be a reputational risk as well. I'm sorry, I could not hear that question really well. Uh,
No, actually, that's not the question. It's someone's mic is not mute.
okay. All right. Yeah, apologies for the break. But so to continue with this example and one case study, what we did was we just tried to understand, okay, if there is a hardware value and a software value posed while procuring an asset, what could be the risk factor to these assets, would give us a lot of insights towards how much of security measures to put in, what amount of efforts to be planned, what is the timeline that we would like to keep in our mind to secure this kind of an asset. So to do that, I just put up a fictitious value chain over here, and you can see that this is the original value of an asset. What we do is we try and understand from system configurations or data provided by the vendors or the users to see what could be the reduction in the value of the asset, or what could be the total annualized reduction of the exposure. So to explain this, I just formulated a few factors, and based on it is the core core system of quantitative risk management technique, which is being utilized by several organizations in this world. So one of those factors which we saw above was the exposure factor. So if a threat comes or gets actuated, what is the subjective value that we would like to put in for the asset is called the exposure factor. The asset value is the total value of the asset while you procure it, the dollar value that you provide to one of your vendors or suppliers to either get a hardware or a software or any kind of services. Now, single loss expectancy, it's the dollar value which can be calculated basis of the exposure factor and the asset value, and that gives us the idea of, okay, if that asset is hit by some catastrophe, any kind of unwanted event, or any kind of unwanted scenarios, this could be my single loss towards that particular instance only. Now, bear in mind that these factors are quite variable, but what we can also have an estimate is how many times during a year we can expect these events to happen, and in combination of these two factors we get the actual risk which has been measured to an extent. I definitely understand and would appreciate if somebody would question me and say, hey, aren't you we looking at the exposure factor on a subjective basis? For sure, yes, we are, but it is a far better and matured method than the classical risk management modules which we are utilizing. And I've seen organizations stuck because the entire risk management module itself is not very utilized well, or let's say cleared up in terms of their benchmark or matrix, and because of that inaccurate decisions were made, and because of that it resulted into multiple iterations of or efforts or timelines to be increased for that project. So in general, when we talk about this formulation technique of quantitative risk management, there are a few factors to consider. There are a few factors which are subjective in nature, but in general it definitely moves the risk assessments needle towards a more accurate side rather than being on a precision side. Any questions or any pointers if anybody would like to raise up? I'll be very happy to do that.
Yes,
Okay.
Gilbert, please.
The previous slide is not correct. So the first ALE for hardware shouldn't be, it should be 10,000 US dollar.
Yeah, I apologize for that, but I hope the essentiality of this example was to explain how an exposure factor would work.
Yes, no problem.
Thank you.
Okay, then my question, is it only a financial risk we are looking to, or is it, how do I use this risk?
Yeah, absolutely. So up on your screen, when you see over here, we are talking about an asset. Now, when we talk about an asset, technology, from a technology perspective, an asset could be anything which enables your IT or the technology side to serve the business side. Now, an asset could be a server, it could be a network component, it could be a laptop or a device or any equipment which is used to enable or render business services or products to your customers or clients. So when we have the value of the asset, what we need to understand is, what is the exposure factor to that asset. So for example, if we buy a server or procure a server, we can understand, or we can probably get to some of the data sets on how much number of hours after computing or operating this server breaks down or starts having a problem. Those factors, combined together will give you a good understanding of an exposure factor. Now, in general, how do we calculate it? Is to have like a simple average taken of various data sets available, and then make a subjective decision on that. But it will still be at a more granular level than a qualitative risk management process.
Okay, but I don't understand how to use that. But then I'm working with small medium enterprises, and how is this risk at this number affecting strategic or tactical goals of my company? I mean, the damage of a server going out could be for much more than this number of money if it's damaging the image of my company. Are you taking that also in quantitative numbers?
Absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. So for that, so then when we are talking about reputational risk into consideration as well, what we need to understand is some of the other factors which will be coming outside the realm of IT. So we would need to involve the legalities of it as well. So somebody from legal team, and we can consider, do we have any pre-signed up contracts with the customer, so that we can check if we are liable to, if the organization which is under risk, as you mentioned, is liable to any fines, or there are any regulatory aspect, or if we have done some valuation of the products and services rendered, what could be the reputational loss as well. So it can be extrapolated to the whole enterprise risk management as well. But generally, to have a quantitative mechanism, risk mechanism, because we need high quality data sets to calculate the exposure factor, most of the times it is advised to keep it within the technology risk segment itself. So for an example, if I need to understand the exposure factor, because of the negative reputational loss, it's very hard or very difficult to collect data on what could be the dent on the image of so and so forth company, if they were hacked, for an example. So we can definitely extrapolate it to the enterprise risk management module to cover those factors as well. But general advice is to keep it within the technology realm.
Okay, so it's in a way only operational risk where you're talking about.
In a way, any technology risk which includes technology operational risk as well.
Are you then saying that quantitative risk is good for operational risk, but maybe less good to use for enterprise risk?
Yes, in a way,
You are
yes.
very definite that quantitative risk is a better solution or a more mature thing than qualitative risk, but I think that maybe qualitative risk is better used for a different field than qualitative risk.
Yeah,
and
that's
it's not like
correct.
the one is better than the other, but they are just different and you use them differently.
Yeah, absolutely correct.
All right, thank you, Gilbert. And then Erwin. Erwin, do you still have a question? Yes, please.
Sorry. Yeah, I had a similar question. Obviously, if a server goes down or storage area network or whatever infra component, it's not so much that component that is the problem. It's the business processes that are supported by it. And then, of course, you have financial impact on the business side. You have reputational loss. You might have regulatory problems or legal problems or customers might face impact, and I think that's where the majority of the impact is. The fact that that server is needs to be renewed or rebuilt or whatever, that's not the biggest loss. And so
No.
I would be curious if you have any ideas on how to estimate those type of losses.
So, apologies. Yeah. So, yeah, very rightly said. It is a pervasive loss of in terms of financial values as well to an organization. What we need to really take care of is the exposure factor. So the more diverse exposure factors we have, the more diverse data sets that we have, the easier it is to adopt the quantitative risk management module even outside the technology realm. So let's say we talk about, you were very right to say that when we talk about the server loss, it's not the exact loss, it is the actual loss when the business service or the products could not be rendered, right, or not provided. Now, most of the times when we have an SLA, we should be able to calculate that, what could be the financial loss to it. When things get tricky, more towards the reputational loss side of things, where we need high quality data set from, let's say, a valuation team of the organization, to have that loss, that exposure factor also incorporated in the calculation, if that makes sense.
Yes, thank you.
And we can connect on this towards the end of the presentation as well.
By the way, one question before we continue to the next slide. Can the arrow vary over multiple years?
The annual rate of occurrence, yeah, absolutely, yes. So for an example, let's talk about a tech stack, again giving a fictitious example. Previously, we were working on an older OS and server model, and it used to break down quite a few times, and we had some instances already in past. We know that at least 3 to 4 times in a data center, one stack of server will go down because of older OS. Now, fast forward, let's say about 6 months, we implemented a new technology stack, and now we now know from the exposure factor that these technology stack is actually required or actually built in to have better computation strength and lesser breakdowns or lesser shutdowns. So then the annual rate of occurrence can be reduced. So we need to have an approach to every data set that we select for annual rate of occurrence as well.
All right, so I guess we can continue with your presentation, and then further questions later. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so just simply put, again, didn't want to really deep dive into the aspects of how do we calculate it, but in general, again, it becomes a very similar or a familiar formula that we have been familiar with. Loss of event or frequency, so, and loss in magnitude, which is like impact and probability, in a classical risk model as well. The only difference, or the only factor or differentiating factor that comes in is, these two elements are now backed up by several underlying data sets, apart from in comparison to the qualitative risk model, which was based on only a matrix right now. And I'll further diversify that in upcoming slides. So now there are various models used for a quantitative risk management process. This is like a base of a quantitative risk management process, and I will also like to introduce to you to FAIR model, this audience, and also explain how these two slides. So this formula, the annualized loss expectancy, and how the FAIR modules are connected really well. So now FAIR is an open source non-profit organization Their standards are also available. Majority of the matured cyber GRC practices also utilize or have started utilizing the FAIR model because of its scalability. Like we did discuss a few minutes back, what if we want to include the business risk or the financial risk or the operational risk or the reputational risk as well. We can adopt it given we have the required data sets available for us. So it is. I would request this audience to also, do check it out on their website. Quite an interesting, format that they use, which will be upcoming now. So on your right hand side is the classical risk formula for a quantitative risk management module. Now I apologize if I don't if we don't have a very high quality image over here, but I can read that out. Now, two factors, two sides to look at it. Loss of event frequency. So how frequent an event or an unwanted event which could become a risk could happen to an organization or a business unit. Now that is further divided into two different parts as well. So a threat event frequency. Please do let me know if anybody would like to get more information about what could be a threat or a vulnerability, or else I would like to continue with this. So then just continuing with the same flow chart, a threat event frequency. Now to determine for a threat to actuate and that event and their frequency of it, we need two factors to it. What is the contact frequency? So how many number of times this event can come into contact of an organization. So that's something which we really need to understand for a particular organization itself. For an example, uh, uh, let's consider a banking environment. For them, data centers and their security standards are quite intact. They keep quite well established controls for physical security as well. But for a fast growing startup, it could be a different case scenario, because they would like to get in and get out of the buildings really fast. Their services are rendered out of laptops and servers, and they do not have really a lot of assets to look into because of the sheer size that they are growing into. Right now they're really small. So the contact frequency really helps in understanding the threat event frequency, and then it contributes to a factor of loss event frequency. Very similar to that, what is the probability of the action? So what's the level of event happening and actuating in that organization as well, is another factor. Then moving to the vulnerability side, threat capability and resistance strength. As you can see, when we talk about a vulnerability, how much capable that particular threat is to destroy or reduce the capacity of the organization in terms of provisioning of services and products, is called threat capability. Resistance strength is what is the organization's strength to work against it. So for an example, if we have a situation where again, taking a data center example, heavily guarded, good physical security controls, good logging mechanisms, cameras as well, and and then in comparison to that, let's say for an example, an army going through, ravaging their data center boundaries, getting into the data centers and pulling out the required data. So this is a real good comparison between what is the capability of the threat and what is the resistance strength of the organization itself to fight that. And with that, we come to a factor of vulnerability, and then we get to a factor of loss event frequency. And that's why I was trying to focus more on the quantitative risk management module, where we keep into account several underlying factors and not only a matrix that would define the probability of that event. Right, so that was the left hand side. Now let's come to the right hand side of the loss magnitude. Now, two things very interestingly, and I would like to share that with this audience. In general, whenever I have tried assessing a risk for any organization, maybe sometimes in my personal life as well, what we look into is the primary loss. Okay, if I miss out the train which is going to the Den Haag, what am I gonna miss out on? I might not be able to reach the show which I wanted to. So that's the primary loss. But most of the times, what we do not calculate or keep in mind is the secondary loss. If I was at the show, I would have an opportunity to meet or network with a few of risk and compliance folks that I wanted to, or to meet with or network with a few more fellow expats if I was going to an expat event. So these are the two factors which really are key to calculate the loss in magnitude, and a combination of that would probably provide a risk in a quantitative format. Now, just taking everybody back to this slide, as we were talking about the ALE, and then it is like a product of the annual rate of occurrence and the single loss expectancy. So you would now I hope you would now be able to correlate a little bit about uh, the scientific method of calculating any quantitative event, and then those fair models, or a newer model which has been built with the terminologies which is utilized in an infosec world. So I believe this is where I really would like to focus on. There are multiple factors underlying a quantitative risk management module, which makes it more closer towards accuracy of risk assessment rather than being precise. And then before going to the next section, anybody would like to have a comment or a question? I'm quite happy to take that.
I see a question from Peter van der Green on the chat, but maybe Peter, you can ask the question directly yourself.
Oh, well, sure. I gladly pose any question. But first of all, thank you very much, Atul, for a very interesting presentation. But my question is essentially about the cost of controls. See, when you manage risk, you try to come up with something like a risk response plan which you do control selection, and those controls eventually need, well, one, of course, implementation and maintenance, and those things are typically not free. So when you try to understand what the effect is, the benefit of these controls, then you would have liked to see that reflected somehow in a reduction of either likelihood or impact. So that was my question. I mean, when you talk about risk, how do you factor in these costs?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me get you back to I'm just looking for any real life example. So for an example, okay, I have my phone in front of me. Do you have a screen guard on your phone?
For me, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So now it's the same factor. What we try and understand is what is the asset value of your phone. For an example, it could be $1,000 phone. When we talk about the screen guard, sure, a part or a small piece of plastic can save at least maybe 30% of the cost of the phone. So the risk factor is probably when you drop your phone, you could probably get into so the primary loss is you lose your device, or it stops working, or you need to repair it. And then comes the secondary loss. Maybe there were important things that has to be planned. You had to send some emails and you were not able to provide or utilize your device when it was required. So the cost of operating or providing controls or implementing a risk management is a self-served cost. What we need to understand is what is the value of the assets. Right above, when we talk about the value of the assets, so I don't think so anybody in this room would like to protect something which is of less value in a data center environment. We would like to protect something like very precise data, confidential information in a data center environment with physical security controls. So major focus when you are implementing a risk management piece is to look at what is your asset values, and how fast you want to get rid of those kind of risks, and that will incorporate those aspects into your project itself. So for example, if because of a risk assessment outcome, uh, you realize that you would need to put in more assets. Now just look at the primary and the secondary loss over here in the loss magnitude, and then things starts to get more clearer. So either pay this much as a fine, or something to compensate that business or product services not being rendered, versus something as a cost of implementation of a few small processes. So it's really intuitive when we go towards the quantitative model. It's less intuitive and little bit difficult to estimate the loss magnitude with the qualitative model. That's pretty much the presentation is all about.
I also have a question, Atul.
Mhm.
I think quantitative risk management helps us mainly to decide whether an investment for risk reduction is justified or
Yeah,
not. Correct?
yeah, it does.
Because if the loss event frequency is 10%, but the
Hmm.
server fails, goes down, then you have maybe 100%. So
Yeah,
that's also the rest risk, the residual risk. But my question is, when I have a complete new investment and I want to do
yeah,
quantitative risk management, but I don't have historical data, so I
yeah,
cannot decide what the loss event frequency is.
yeah.
What to do then?
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic question. Thank you so much. I would love to answer this. So two things to note here, two different scenarios to look at it. Number one, so let's say if there is a new investment coming in, I would just like to clarify, is it something on a technology side? I'm assuming, so maybe a new hardware or software coming in to your organization.
I think that's the easiest to calculate.
Yeah, okay. So let's say we talk about an IT equipment coming in. An IT equipment generally also is attached to a product or a business service. So for that, if we follow something in an ITSM format, it would be like a service catalog, and that service catalog will tell you, okay, these many types of equipment or assets or softwares slash anything in an IT world would help in providing that business service. So your historical data would start from the business service or the product that that particular equipment was providing to. So let's say there is a new investment coming in, but you already know why do you need that particular equipment, right? Or particular asset. Now
Yes.
now to understand the value of that, you need to understand what is that asset providing in terms of product and services to that organization. That will be the initial data set. Now that here things become more interesting. So once that is established, this goes like a feedback format as well. So the next year, you can also have two sets of data. One, what are the business products and services which are required, which is rendered by this particular asset that I was procuring. And the second thing is, what is the loss in magnitude when this particular asset also goes down? So because when I bought an asset, so let's say I bought $100 worth of a server, I already have that asset with me as well. That value also goes down, right? So in combination of these two, you would get more mature data sets to calculate your risk exposure. That these are two factors. Then what I can also suggest is, whenever anybody buys an equipment, majority of them, when the vendors do come up very nice plans, hey, my server is best, my network equipment is one of the best in market, you can always ask for their product specifications, their faulty, or let's say their limitations of the equipment, their failure mechanism, or failure scenarios as well, and that would give a huge understanding in terms of exposure factor. So for an example, if I run a firewall for 10,000 hours, would it break, or would it stop, or would it reboot or do something? There would be some logs, there would be some data which is very easily slipped through the carpets when we make some agreements with our vendors and suppliers, and that would be a really big contributing factor in the exposure factor of the asset.
Clear, thanks.
Okay, great. All right. Are we on time? Can we move to the next section if
Yes,
there are no questions?
we can move to the next
Okay.
one. Thank you.
Thank you. So then, while I did really discuss, at a high level about, why quantitative risk management is important, and why we should use it, but hey, with advancement in any direction, we also come up with some of the things, like which can be like a drawback. So I tried listing down a few implementation prerequisites and areas to ponder now before we get into a quantitative model. And for this one, I would like to take it point by point, because some of them can be relatable to your environment as well. So before I started, or like a few minutes back, I did mention that quantitative risk management is quite advisable to use in a technology world, more to understand within the technology realm itself. And the core of any IT governance is asset management, because what would you do if you don't know which assets is available on the network of an organization, and what is the value of that asset, both in terms of what is the actual value of the asset and what is the business value of the asset, which means what services and products are rendered by that particular asset, and hence that asset income combination becomes valuable. So for core of any quantitative risk management, we need an asset management. We need something which is quite working. We needn't have world class tools, but what we need to really understand is which are my assets, what is the actual value of it, and what services are they rendering to the organization, which is either related to a customer or a client. All right. So moving to the next one, inadequacy of data. As the gentleman asked the previous question, there could be inadequacy of data. It could be a situation that there is something really new technology that has been incorporated. So for that, we need to make some assumptions, and that's where this model is also a little bit on the limiting side of calculating the accurate risk values. So there could be inadequacy of data. What we need to understand is how utilized a particular technology equipment is in the market, and whether do we have any product reviews or services reviews, or any logs or any relatable data to calculate the exposure factor. Now, the third factor which comes here is expertise required in careful interpretation. Now, we don't need to be really quite great in mathematics to have like a 4x4 or a 3x3 matrix and calculate risk accordingly. But when we talk about multiple factors required to calculate the exposure factor, it could require somebody with an expertise to gather those or collate that amount of that data sets, and make it into a meaningful interpretation to calculate different areas as mentioned in this FAIR model. Now, FAIR model is a beautification of the slide which we had discussed a little bit earlier, which was this one. But essentially, expertise is required when you have, like, let's say 10 to 12 factors with different biases. So for an example, if I have 5 factors providing exposure factor to me for an asset, how do I rate those 5 factors? Now, what could be the bias to each of the factors? For that, somebody needs expertise. Now, what kind of expertise? Number one, expertise in understanding your own products and services, expertise in understanding your own technology stack, and expertise in understanding how would this new technology piece coming in or going out would affect my current state, both in business and IT. Then coming to the next factor is stakeholders understanding and buying. Now, this is a very personal effect or personal pointer that I would like to share with this audience. Whenever I have did mentioned quantitative risk management module, a general norm in an organization, in any standard organization, is don't disturb a running wheel, or something which is working, let's not disturb it. And to do that, to change that status quo from having a more precise model for risk management versus more accurate model of risk management, we need stakeholders buy-in. When we try and reach out to our stakeholders, first question that is asked is, was there any problem identified in the risk management? The answer most probably would be no. But what we need to understand, and probably also make them believe to get their buy-in, is with this accurate model, we can get to better decision making capabilities rather than a qualitative or a classical model. So it is a real time challenge that I have faced in as well, and I thought it would be nice if I could share it in my slides. Then external audit preparations, very similar, only here that the stakeholders are from external side of the organization. So some of the internal stakeholders have difficulty in understanding and then providing the buy-in. Some of the times when the external auditor would also come in, they would also might question a bit more about, hey, how did you set up this exposure factor? Why did you choose this parameter itself rather than the other one? And if they have more data, the situation or the discussion can become a little bit more complex. Needed not necessarily, it's not very difficult to understand that this will be a time consuming process. It will be a process where initial implementation time is a little bit higher, especially because of the factor of asset management into the picture, and that gives a much more delayed effect, but a better effect in terms of taking accurate decisions in risk management. Now, the result credibility, another interesting factor. What if our expert made some calculation mistake? Who is going to check that? Or how do we ensure that the risk management calculations done for maybe 20,000 assets on 10 factors was done accurately? So there is some ambiguity over there. As far as I've researched, I believe there is a human factor involved, definitely. So it is very much advised to utilize some standard softwares available, which is not very difficult to train in, but could require some time to get a grip on. Then comes the ownership issues. Because these results can be complex, most of the times what I've seen is when we try and implement a quantitative risk management process, the ownership falls back onto the risk managing person itself, or let's say the person who is running the program of risk management. Because you did it, I mean, you started it, you continue with it, I don't understand it, hence I cannot help. And that's a very general expected answer out of any organization. What we need to understand is, if we solve the result credibility part, if we agree to accept the results coming out of the expert we appointed, then the ownership issues can be solved. So I took you through all these pointers which I found important as a prerequisite to look into before we deep dive into qualitative model. And I also tried explaining how we can get out of it. So probably there are pitfalls, but there are also ways by which we can avoid it. And in general, I believe it's still a better approach towards getting your accurate data sets towards risk management. I think that's it from my side. I am unaware of the time, but if there are any questions, any comments, I'll be very happy to take them. And thank you so much for joining and listening to me.
Thank you, Atul. Looking at the time, so I open one question for any participant who would like to ask directly the question. Just open your microphone, please. Gilbert?
Yeah, Atul, getting all this numbers for quantitative risk is quite an effort, but then a certain type of server is a certain type of server. are there any shared sources where you can get these basic numbers to work with?
Are there any basic sources? So are we talking about sources in terms of exposure factor or occurrence? If you could be a little bit more
Exactly.
precise, that would be helpful.
Exactly. Just like that. I mean, there must be people already having numbers for certain type of servers,
Mhm.
how often they would have a fault in their say storage device or whatever. I
So,
mean,
so
if you
how
have to
often?
start it all new, then it's really a big thing. But I can imagine that if you can start with some good numbers, then it's doable.
Yeah, so there are some places, let's say, on top of the fair model. So let's start with the base model. The base was the formula, the ALE formula, the annualized loss exposure, and that was a product of annual risk occurrence and an exposure factor. And on top of that, we did talk about the fair model, how to make it more easily readable in the infosec world. And on top of that, there are some offerings from some softwares, like risk lens. These are some of the softwares, and there are multiple others as well. If you just try and give it a search, you'd find them, and they come up with some of the pre-populated data sets as well. So those pre-populated data sets are like, if you have a Windows uh, XP server, for an example, you could expect these many problems in services, and you can utilize them as your standard data set in the beginning. And accordingly, when the process matures itself, that's the beauty of it, because it's a feedback mechanism. You would be able to see, hey, the log or the preset said 10 times in an year it would break down. I only saw it 5. I did not see any incidents. I did not see any changes required. I did not see any hiccups. I did not see any user complaints. I did not myself see any glitch. I'm only talking about, let's say, from an IT management perspective. Well, we can start to look towards reducing that number, and then you can also see when that number is reduced, the product or the risk value reduces, and hence the dollar value of the risk exposure reduces, and hence you can make more decisions which were previously in the dark.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you for the answer, Atul. So I guess looking at the time, so let's end the session for tonight. Once again, thank you very much on behalf of ISAC Netherlands chapter and also Norea to our speaker and also all the participants. Thank you and have a good evening, everybody. Thank you very much.